The four people in the room reacted to his arrival differently. Nephis seemed to be indifferent, as always. However, Sunny knew her well enough to notice a strange tension hiding in the depths of her calm gray eyes. Castor greeted him with an amiable smile, but there was coldness hiding behind it. It seemed as though the handsome scion was not happy about this turn of events. Did he see him as a rival for Neff's attention, or was there more to it? In any case, it was not Sunny's problem. He did not plan on returning to the cohort on a permanent basis. Castor could have all the attention to himself. Effie looked at him with a genuine surprise. "Doofus, you are actually alive?" Sunny blinked and stared at her for a few moments, then said in an acrid tone, "Sorry to disappoint." She shook her head. No, just, how the hell did you manage to survive 3 whole months in the ruins?" He grinned. "What can I say? I had a good teacher, since Effie was the one who taught him how to navigate the Dark City. That compliment was directed at her." However, the huntress simply shook her head. "No student of mine would be stupid enough to actually live in the ruins, not to mention returning looking so feral." "Do I look feral?" Sunny took a mental picture of himself. Ragged clothes, dirty hair, a crooked grin, a hint of madness burning in his eyes. No, he couldn't see anything wrong with how he looked. In fact, the thought he looked great. With an offended frown, he glanced at Effie and said, "Yeah? Well, you look like you've gained a little weight. Not in all the right places. Focus, fool." The huntress glared at him for a few moments, then laughed. A girl got to eat, but also wanna die? And finally, there was Cassie. Cassie seemed to have changed the most out of all of them. The changes were not instantly apparent, but to Sunny, who knew her so well, they were unmistakable. The blind girl seemed more mature. She looked older, somehow. It was as if there was an invisible weight pressing down on her, the kind that people usually accumulated with the flow of years. Her demeanor was calmer, more restrained, almost cold. "Welcome back, Sunny. I'm so happy that you are all right." Giving him a polite smile, she grew silent and turned away. This wasn't exactly the kind of welcome he had expected from her. He had been sure that the blind girl would give him a hug, at least. That was how it always happened in his head. Maybe she is shy because of Kai. However, Sunny had a feeling that he already knew the true reason for her subdued attitude. He just didn't want to admit it. It was the vision, that damn vision, chasing away the feeling of dread. He sat down on one of the chairs and offered another one to Kai. "So, what did you guys want to discuss?" Nephis and Castor exchanged glances. Before saying anything, Castor walked over to the door and closed it. After that, he summoned a memory that looked like a bone flute and placed it on the table. Immediately, something in the room imperceptibly changed. Sunny raised an eyebrow. "What is that thing?" The handsome young man sat on a chair next to Changing Star and said, "This memory has an enchantment that creates a cone of silence. No one outside this room will be able to hear what we're talking about now." This fact alone was already enough to tell Sunny that they were going to discuss something that had to do with the Bright Lord, Gunlag himself. Suddenly, he felt an irrational desire to be anywhere else but in this brightly lit room. The wide window began to look very alluring. He sighed. "So, the Bright Lord is finally ready to obliterate you all. Can't say that I'm surprised. If anything, it's strange that he didn't make a move much earlier." Effie giggled. "Oh, did he ever?" Nephis glanced at her, making the huntress fall silent, and turned to Sunny. "You are right. The Bright Lord is indeed about to make a move. We have withstood his previous attacks, but they were just a rehearsal, a few provocations to test our strength. Now, he is ready to act in earnest, and that's why I need your help." Sunny raised his eyebrow. "How can a cockroach like me help the great and mighty Changing Star of the Immortal Flame Clan?" Effie gave him and Nephis a strange look, then cleared her throat. Don't take it to heart, Princess, but I sort of agree with Sunny. What can this little no offense, Sunny, do that we can't? I mean, he is a decent scout, but… Hey, offense taken. Changing Star smiled, then looked at Sunny. Don't be misled by his act, Effie. Sunny might behave like a cowardly weakling, but in fact he's the last person in the Dark City I would want to face in combat. He is far more dangerous than anyone thinks he is. Isn't it right, Sunny? The smile froze on his face. A few moments passed in silence, with everyone staring at him. Finally, Sunny sighed. Oh well, I guess the secret is out of the box. Surprise, everybody, I am actually not a weakling. Who could have thought? Then he glared at Effie and added in a mocking tone, Oh, my mistake. Actually, everyone except for you already knew. It seems that you are… However, Neff interrupted him. That's why he was able to survive 3 months in the ruins, just like he had survived 2 in the labyrinth. Sunny is an extremely formidable fighter. Wow, is she trying to flatter me? He's just a bit of a devious asshole, but that's exactly what makes him so dangerous. I guess not. Looking at Effie, Sunny shrugged and smirked. If you don't believe her, just ask Knight. Suddenly dragged into the conversation, Kai coughed, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Yes, I can confirm. He is indeed a bit of an asshole. Sunny's face twitched. Not that. Tell them how I saved you. The charming archer fluttered his eyelashes with an innocent look, then added, Oh, right. Indeed, Sunny saved me in the ruins last night. He is a very exceptional and resourceful individual. Sunny glanced at Effie with triumph. He didn't really want to provoke the tall huntress any further, but she did call him a little imp. See, Knight has known me for just 1 night, but even he was able to see how fearsome I am. You and I, on the other hand, had hunted together for an entire month. How come you're so dense? Whatever. It's not like he would be spending a lot of time with Effie. Let her boil with anger. With a teasing smile on his lips, Sunny turned to Nephis and asked, Anyway, what exactly do you want me to do? Changing Star hesitated, then said, I want you to take Effie to your hideout in the ruins and keep her safe there for about a week. Sunny blinked. Oh no, I'm dead. Sunny grew silent and tried very hard not to look at the huntress, who was glaring at him with murder in her eyes. Did he hear it right? Excuse me, keep her safe? Nephis gave him a nod, then hesitated for a few moments and sighed. I guess I owe you an explanation. With a frown, she glanced at the map of the Dark City. Her gaze was fixed on the symbol of a tower drawn in its center with white paint. The bright castle. After a few moments, she said, You asked why Gunlag hasn't killed us all yet. This is a good question. However, the answer is complicated. Changing Star turned her head and looked at Sunny. Partially, it is because I have not challenged him openly yet. I also haven't done anything to justify an intervention. Everything we have accomplished for the benefit of the outer settlement not only fell outside the purview of his reign over the castle, but also strengthened the human position on the Forgotten Shore overall. Officially, he has no grounds to accuse me, Sunny scoffed. It's not like Gunlock really needs justification. He only needs the pretense of one, and even then just barely. Nephis slightly frowned. You are right. If he really wanted to escalate the situation and bring about an open conflict, he could have easily created a reason. Alternatively, he could have sent Harris under the cover of night to make me disappear without a trace. But he didn't, and we are not entirely sure why. Sunny blinked. You don't know? Glancing at Castor, Neff shook her head. There are several possible reasons. Perhaps he is uncertain if Harris will be able to dispose of me. Perhaps he is using the growing status of the outer settlement as a deterrent against his lieutenant's ambitions. Perhaps he is just confident and patient. Whatever the case, Gunlog more or less tolerated our existence for these past 4 months. Castor sighed and added, "Of course, there were still challenges we had to overcome. If we weren't cautious in how we dealt with these provocations, things would have been very different." Changing Star nodded. Indeed, there were several attempts to taunt us into confrontation already. Nothing too bloody, though. However, things seem to have changed. We received word from the castle that Gunlog is going to act against us soon. This time he is aiming at one of my companions. The attack will be a serious one, and the target is Effie. Sonny glanced at the unruly huntress and raised his eyebrows. He had a lot of questions. Why her? Castor clenched his fists. It could have been any of us, really, but Effie, despite all my warnings, got into a rather vulgar argument with a bunch of guards who came into the outer settlement for some entertainment. Coincidentally, some of these guards went missing last night. No one knows what happened to them. Oops. Sonny was pretty sure that he knew exactly what had happened to them, though. After all, he was the one who killed them. But Castor didn't need to know any of this. Actually, I might know something about that, Kai suddenly said, smiling like an idiot. Who asked that fool to open his mouth? He tried to make the archer shut up with a murderous stare, but it was already too late. Kai enthusiastically went on to describe how he was kidnapped, put in the well, and then rescued by a mysterious stranger who turned out to be Sonny. Luckily, he was under the impression that the kidnappers were all slaughtered by the Black Knight, not realizing that Sonny was the one who had lured them into the cathedral in the first place, after personally killing their leader. If Kai knew the full truth, things might have turned rather awkward. After he was done talking, Castor sighed. "Thank you. This is a very valuable piece of information. Sadly, it doesn't change anything. Effie is still in danger. The Bright Lord is going to use her as a hostage and force Lady Nephis to challenge him. If she does, he will kill her. If she doesn't, Effie will die, and our reputation will be ruined. Either way, he wins." Sonny cast a sideways glance at Effie, who was still relaxed and seemingly undisturbed by the prospect of dying horribly in the dungeons of the Bright Castle. In fact, she was currently more interested in fishing out a piece of meat that was stuck between her pearly teeth and not paying Castor any attention. What a lunatic, Sonny thought with scorn, making his shadow shake its head at the irony of that statement. Turning to Nephis and Castor, he asked, "How do you know all this?" In fact, this question was moot. He already had the idea. To receive information about Gunlog's plans, they had to have a spy in the castle. More than that, given the nature of that information, it had to be someone of considerable rank, perhaps even someone in the inner circle of the Bright Lord. Was Neph working with one of the lieutenants? Sonny counted the number of chairs in the room. There were 7 chairs, but only 6 people. Interesting. Castor hesitated, then reluctantly said, "We have an ally." Sonny decided not to press the issue any further. Frankly, he didn't really want to know. There was just one last question he wanted to ask. "I see. Well, there is this one thing that I don't really understand. You said to keep Effie safe for a week. What is going to change in a week? I doubt that Gunlog will magically forget everything after a few days." A heavy silence descended on the room. No one seemed to want to speak first. After a few moments passed, Nephis finally broke the silence. Looking in the window, she leaned back and said in her usual even, indifferent tone, "In a week, we will be ready to leave the city." Sonny almost fell from his chair. That was not what he had expected to hear. Soon, another map was spread on the table. This one was drawn on a piece of crude parchment made out of monster hide, and much less detailed than the one hanging on the wall. Well, that was understandable, because the second map did not depict the Dark City, but the Forgotten Shore itself. Sonny stared at it in stunned silence. Yeah, Nephis had not wasted any time during these 3 months. He had no idea how she had gathered all this information, but there was a lot more on the map than he could have ever imagined. At the center of it, a straight black line depicted the Crimson Spire. The labyrinth flowed from it, devouring the parchment like an ocean of blood. To the east, a small circle of black ink with a symbol of a white tower inside of it marked the Dark City. The city was perched on the edge of another, much larger circle. It didn't take too much effort to recognize the Cyclopean crater. After all, Sunny had traversed it on a rickety boat once, a lifetime ago. However, only now, looking at it in scale, did he finally realize just how giant the crater was and how vast the forgotten shore itself appeared. Back on Earth, it would have been as large as a continent. The Dream Realm was indeed much bigger than their own planet, considering that just one of its numerous regions was this enormous. There were other symbols on the map that he didn't recognize. However, several of them attracted his attention especially. On the other side of the crater, almost exactly opposite the Dark City, a symbol of a tree depicted the Ashen Barrow. Some distance to the east of it, on a straight line, there was a mark in the shape of a red cross. Another red cross was drawn inside the crater just outside the eastern side of the Dark City. The third one was about a week's worth of traveling time to the north, near a symbol that looked like a grotesque, misshapen skull. The fourth one was halfway between the ruins and the Crimson Spire. The fifth one lay to the south, about the same distance as the third, drawn atop the symbol of an arching bridge. The last red cross was at the very edge of the parchment, far away to the south, beyond the labyrinth. Near it, two symbols were drawn. One was a crown, and the other one was a question mark. Sunny quickly realized what these crosses represented. They were the giant statues of the 7 forgotten heroes who had given the terrible oath to vanquish the darkness and created the Starlight Legion. The one to the east of the Soul Devourer was the statue of the knight that he had used as a shelter on his first night in the Dream Realm. The one near the walls of the city belonged to the woman whose hand had saved them from drowning in the dark sea on the night of their escape. The other 4 crosses, most likely, marked 4 more headless statues. But where was the 7th? Frowning, Sunny glanced at the map and said, "So let me get this straight. You want to leave the Dark City, cross the labyrinth, reach the edges of the Forgotten Shore, and then return." Nephis smiled. "Pretty much, yes," he sighed. "If we somehow survive the months of traveling through the labyrinth and actually manage to escape it, why the hell would we return?" The smile on her face withered. Changing Star lingered for a few moments, then pointed to the 3 symbols at the lower edge of the map, the red cross, the question mark, and the crown. The first lord of the castle led an expedition to find the way out of the Forgotten Shore. This is where their trace disappeared. From what we were able to learn, an unassailable mountain chain blocks the path to the south. They ventured into the mountains and never returned. Nothing but death awaits us there. Sunny scratched the back of his head. "So you aren't really looking for a way out. You're looking for the remains of the cohort of sleepers that had conquered the castle 15 years ago." Neff nodded. "There is an item that they took away from the castle. If we find it, we'll have a chance in the fight against Gunlaug." Sunny frowned. He felt as though she was not telling him everything. Maybe what little trust remained between them was not enough to share those secrets. Maybe she didn't want someone else in the room to hear them, but then again, he didn't really care. Changing Star's business was her own. Sunny was just here as a potential mercenary. As long as the reward was worth it, he was ready to not ask any questions, provided that not knowing the answers was not going to get him killed, of course. Feeling his hesitation, Nephis added, "The way to the mountains is not as dangerous as you think. There is a method we can use to reach them comparatively safely. But once we're there, That's where we'll need your talents. Having you with us will make a lot of things easier. Sunny looked at her with doubt. How do you know all this? It's not like there's anyone in the Dark City who was alive back then. Nephis shrugged. There isn't, but there are stories, some written evidence. However, most of this we have learned from Cassie's visions. She gave the blind girl a warm look. Cassie has helped us a lot. Sunny had to think. If Changing Star made this plan, it meant that she had good reasons to believe that it was doable. Of course, there would be danger. Nothing on the Forgotten Shore was ever safe or easy, but there was a rare opportunity in all of this too. He felt very tempted to leave the ruins for a few months in the company of an extremely formidable cohort. Outside the walls of the Dark City, nightmare creatures were generally of a lower rank than those inside. The efficiency of his hunting would be much higher, which would land him more shadow fragments and memories to feed to the Stone Saint, especially if powerhouses like Nephis, Effie, and Castor were fighting alongside him. But more importantly, if Cassie was there to warn them of the dangers that they had no business trying to fight. He never forgot how many times her affinity to mysteries and revelations had saved their lives in the past. Like on that awful night when they had summoned a terrifying mimic from the depths of the dark sea. With a true seer accompanying them, the most harrowing thing about the labyrinth, the cursed black waters, were not as unknowable and thus deadly anymore. So he was not immediately against the idea, more so because he would be additionally compensated for the efforts. But there was something else that he had to consider. Looking up, Sunny glanced at the people gathered in the room and cleared his throat. I would like to talk to Nephis alone, please." Most of them just stared at him without moving. Castor, especially, did not seem happy about the prospect. What is it about him and Neph? Why is he so possessive? But after Changing Star gave them a look, they reluctantly stood up and left the room one after another. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Soon, Sunny and Nephis were left alone. He hesitated for a long time before finally speaking. His voice was raw and hoarse. "Neph, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to pull me back? Don't you know how this all will end?" She watched him silently for a while, with an inexorable expression. Then she simply said, "Because there's only two people I trust in this world, Sunny. One is Cassie, the other one is you. I only trust you to have my back." He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Have your back? Neph, you know what awaits the two of us in the future. This story won't have a happy ending. There'll be only sorrow, pain, and rage, remember?" Changing Star lingered for a few moments. Her face was calm and firm. When the silence became almost overwhelming, she finally answered, "Life is not a story, Sunny. It only ends when you die." He smiled crookedly, not knowing how to answer. "So, will you help me?" Sunny sighed and stood up, glancing at the map of the Forgotten Shore one last time. "I don't know. I need some time to think. I'll take Effie and keep her safe for a week. You'll have the answer once we meet again." She nodded, accepting that condition. Turning around, Sunny forced himself to appear nonchalant and left. As soon as the door closed behind him, his expression changed. "Damn, I forgot to discuss my compensation. It would look really silly if he went back now, right? Right?" The shadow palmed its face, once again lamenting the stupidity of its master. Once outside, Sunny spent some time finding Effie and Kai. The two of them were in the dining area of the lodge, discussing something between themselves. There was no sign of Cassie anywhere, but he did notice Castor observing him from the stairs leading to the second floor. "Is she avoiding me?" Somewhat disappointed, Sunny landed on a chair next to the two locals he had come to know and gave them a dark look. "What? The two of you know each other?" Kai smiled. "Who doesn't know Huntress Athena? We had a few brushes in the past." Deciding not to inquire what type of brushes he was talking about, Sunny sighed and asked, "Does she know about that peculiar flaw of yours?" The charming young man blinked a couple of times, then said with confusion, "I guess so. I don't make a secret out of it. Great. Of all the people in the world, he got stuck with two weirdos who had no qualms about telling every random stranger about their most hidden vulnerability. Well, if he had a flaw like Kai's, he wouldn't worry about it too much either. Lucky bastard." Since there was no point in pretending anymore, Sunny simply asked, "Well, was anyone in that room lying?" Effie grinned. "Ah, so that's why you dragged Knight along. Paranoid much?" Sunny would love nothing more than to ignore that question, but unfortunately his own flaw was much more restrictive than Kai's. "Not at all. In fact, I think that I'm exactly as paranoid as a person should be, by which I mean extremely, of course." Saying that, he looked at the charming archer with expectation. Kai hesitated for a few moments. "No, no one said a single lie. Your friends are all extremely honest people, Sonny." "Oh, you poor lamb." Not knowing how to react to that display of naivete, Sonny shook his head and lowered his voice. "Not even Castor?" Cacta gave him a nod. No, he was honest too. Was Sonny wrong? Was Castor really just an honest and honorable guy? Was his distrust irrational? Somewhat unsure, Sonny lingered for a bit and then turned to Effie. "Neff and I agreed to continue our conversation in a week. Until then, you'll be under my protection." The huntress giggled. "Wow, that makes me feel real safe. Thanks, Shorty." He grimaced. "Don't you worry. I might not look like much, but wait till you see my roommate." Kai suddenly choked on his drink and paled a little. Reminded of something, Sonny patted him on the back and said, "Anyway, thanks for your help. Our deal is done. See you around, I guess." He was not going to miss this guy one bit. Sonny wasn't winning any prizes with his looks already, but next to Kai, he seemed downright ugh. Barely above average. The charming archer looked at him for a few moments, then forced out a smile. "Yeah, it was nice to make your acquaintance, Sonny. I can honestly say that spending time with you is, an unforgettable experience." With that, he glanced at Effie with something that resembled pity, rose, and left. The two of them were left alone. The huntress looked around with a weary expression and then asked in a neutral tone, "So, when do we leave?" Sonny didn't hesitate. "Right now. Honestly, I can't wait to get back to the ruins. This place, it gives me the creeps." Effie gave him a strange look, then shrugged. "Sure, no problem. Let's ditch this scary place and go hide in the ancient cursed ruins. At least we can feel safe there, right?" Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Sometime later, they were carefully walking through the streets of the dark city. Being here in daylight was not something Sonny was accustomed to, so he was justifiably tense. Luckily, both of them were experienced hunters and worked well together. Sonny fell into the familiar rhythm of cooperating with Effie without skipping a beat, as though 3 whole months had not passed since they last saw each other. It was honestly nothing short of jolly. At some point, the unruly huntress glanced at him and asked, "But seriously, how did you survive, Sonny?" He gave her a dark look, then shrugged. "How do you think? You know that I am very good at hiding in the shadows. I slept during the day and hunted during the night, observed my prey carefully before striking at their weak spots. If I ever met something I wasn't sure I could kill, I ran." She became thoughtful for a while, then said, "It's noticeable, you know. You've changed. You feel like a true hunter now." Sonny grinned. "Well, I would hope so. I hunted more nightmare creatures than was reasonable, really." She smirked. "How many?" That was a good question. Sonny hesitated before answering. "Around 60? Yeah, no more than that, I think." Together with those terrors he had slain in the labyrinth, his kill count had long ago moved past 100. Effie blinked and looked at him with a dark expression. That many hunts in only 3 months, the number was nothing short of staggering. Actually, it was completely insane. Out in the real world, it was widely known that awakened nightmare creatures were too tough for mere sleepers to fight. Anyone who managed to prevail in a battle against one would earn themselves a proper reputation. Killing a dozen would make a person famous. If Sonny were to return home and claim that he had slaughtered 100, most of them in a cursed ruin populated by fallen abominations, the news of his accomplishment would fly around the whole planet in an instant. He would be hailed as an unparalleled genius and a hope of the entire generation. And yet, there were dozens of people just like him in the Dark City, many of them even more accomplished, much more. Effie had several hundred hunts under her belt. There were a couple more hunters in the outer settlement whose track record was just as impressive, even if with the death of Jubei their numbers had shrunk. Inside the bright castle, there was Gunlak himself, his 5 lieutenants, all the pathfinders of the host, more than a few experienced hunters, and even a handful of guards with a lot of battle scars to prove their prowess. All of them were at a level that sleepers simply weren't supposed to ever achieve. The Forgotten Shore was truly an interesting place. If Nephis were to somehow succeed and bring even just several of them back to the real world, how would the world change? Would other things that had been considered impossible before suddenly have their status put under scrutiny? Was it the reason why the spell gave her the name Changing Star? Was Neph destined to not only create change, but also be the catalyst of it? Consumed with these thoughts, Sonny walked through the cursed ruins. Soon, a familiar shape of the cathedral appeared before his eyes. Looking at it, Sonny shuddered. He had been honest when he told Effie about how he managed to survive all this time. However, he had failed to mention how close he came to dying in the process. The memory of his first visit to the cathedral and its consequences was something he really liked to avoid. It happened a few weeks after he left the castle behind. Back then, Sonny was just starting to feel confident in the absolute darkness of the cursed night. He stalked the ruins, searching for prey and slaying one monster after another. Looking back, those few victories might have gone to his head a little, or maybe he was just too sane to survive alone in the Dark City. It was the first meeting with the Black Knight that caused him to lose that state of mind. Sonny did not become interested in the ruined cathedral by accident, nor was he led there by empty curiosity. In fact, he had noticed something strange about the ancient temple and decided to explore it after careful consideration, because the thing he saw was too alluring to ignore. At dawn, for a few short minutes, he could see a weak, ethereal golden glow emanating from the dark cathedral, the same golden glow he had seen twice before, once deep within the ruby droplets of his own blood after consuming the drop of ichor, and another time exuding from Changing Star's unconscious body after her battle with the horror of the depths. Without having to guess, Sonny knew what this golden shine was. It was the light of divinity. With his own eyes altered by the drop of divine blood, which was left on the talons of the vile thieving bird after it had stolen Weaver's eye, Sonny was somehow able to perceive it. Considering that both Nephis and he possessed some measure of divine affinity, it wasn't hard to come to this conclusion. More than that, the circumstances surrounding the awakening of his ability to see the golden glow supported it. Thus, hoping to find another treasure equal to the drop of ichor, Sonny entered the ruined cathedral. Then he froze for a second, awed by its grandeur. That second was all it took for the Black Knight to skewer him on his sword. Sonny didn't know how the massive devil managed to avoid being seen by his shadow, nor how he got so close without making any noise. All he knew was that a menacing black giant suddenly stepped forward from the darkness that enveloped the temple and pierced him with a wrathful gaze. There were 2 scarlet flames burning in the impenetrable emptiness behind the visor of the knight's helmet. Looking at them, Sonny felt as though he was staring into the eyes of death itself. However, even though Sunny was caught by surprise, his body moved on its own. Countless hours of practice did not go to waste. In the end, it were the reflexes that Sunny had engraved into his muscles and bones that saved his life, even if only by a hair's breadth. Because of his quick reaction, the massive greatsword of the evil creature did not cut him in two. Instead, it simply disemboweled him. Feeling a blinding pain pierce his abdomen, Sunny staggered and looked down, only to see a river of blood flowing from his stomach, which was cut wide open. The red ropes of his intestines were clearly visible in the terrible wound, already on their way to falling out. The horror of seeing something that should have been inside of him moving to the outside was much more powerful than the excruciating pain of his flesh being torn apart. Pressing one hand against the wound, Sunny fell on his back and weakly tried to crawl away. However, the Black Knight was already moving, raising his greatsword to deliver a finishing blow. For a fraction of a second, everything froze. Sunny didn't have time to come up with an elaborate plan, nor even think things through. All he knew was that he had to buy himself a chance to crawl away, somehow. Of all the memories at his disposal, nothing seemed to be of use. Not the austere and razor-sharp midnight shard, not the ominous and powerful puppeteer's shroud. His mighty Tier 5 armor did not even slow the black blade for a moment. Even augmented by the shadow, they were not a match for the terrifying devil of the ruined cathedral. In the end, Sunny simply thrust his hand forward and let a small and ordinary-looking rock fly from it into the depths of the ancient temple. His shadow wrapped itself around the little stone, enhancing its enchantments. In the next moment, the rock suddenly howled, replicating the scream of the last nightmare creature that Sunny had killed. Augmented by the shadow, the howl shook the walls of the cathedral, causing dust to fly into the air. The Black Knight stopped, then looked over his shoulder in the direction where the howl was coming from. He seemed to hesitate for a moment. Not wasting any time, Sunny pressed tight onto his terrible wound, rose to his feet and staggered away, almost slipping in the puddle of his own blood. Groaning from pain, he tried to reach the exit of the old temple. Miraculously, he did. The Black Knight stopped in the doorway, simply following the small figure of the mortally wounded human with the burning flames that served him as eyes. Then it indifferently turned away and slowly returned into the darkness. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Some time later, Sunny found himself lying in a ditch somewhere in the depths of the dark city. He had found his way to this ditch and crawled into it, hoping to hide himself from the monsters stalking the ruins at night. He was consumed by pain, fear, and disbelief. Was this how it was all going to end? Was this how he was going to die? He wanted to cry for help, but knew that no one would come. He wanted to simply cry, but for some reason, nothing but laughter escaped from his lips. Funny. It was just too damn funny. An outskirt rat like him dying in a ditch. What a fitting end. Why wouldn't he laugh? It was all just so hilarious. A laughing fit sent him into an ocean of suffering. Every time he moved, it felt as though invisible blades were cutting into his abdomen, slicing his flesh apart. And yet he couldn't stop laughing. The funniest thing of all was that he couldn't even die. No matter how much he bled, his tenacious blood refused to give up. Guided by blood weave, it desperately tried to repair the damage done to his body. However, the damage was just too extensive. Even augmented by the shadow, the blood weave couldn't contend with it. In the end, he was locked in an endless cycle of excruciating agony, not quite alive, but also unable to die yet. Minute after minute, hour after hour, nothing but pain and suffering drowned his consciousness until something inside simply cracked. Who wouldn't have gone mad? Through the fog that clouded his mind, Sunny hazily realized that the sun had come up then disappeared again. This happened a few times until he finally let out a quiet sigh. Enough was enough. He couldn't take it anymore. It was time to give up. He had a good run, really, but how could anyone endure all this? He wanted to die. He was ready. Ready. Are you really ready? Sonny thought for a bit, and then suddenly bared his teeth. Fuck no. He was not ready. Give up. Never, never. He was never going to give up. He refused to give the world the satisfaction of devouring him, not unless it choked to death on his soul. No, I'm not going to die. I'm going to live. I'm going to thrive. I'll be the last one standing, no matter what. With that thought, he summoned the midnight shard and gripped its hilt with the last bit of strength left in his body. Memory enchantments. Arenos. Enchantment description. Arenos. Areno harino. Midin soud. Areno harino. In spit woods that soud. Areno. Ins mininis anoilin to surrender. Responding to his vicious promise, the ancient blade finally opened the gate to the well of power hiding somewhere deep within his soul. Instantly, a torrent of energy filled his body with dark resolve. The power given to Sonny by the Midnight Shard enhanced the healing factor of Bloodweave, allowing it to just barely keep him from slipping over the edge of death while it slowly began to repair his ravaged body. And as long as he was almost dead, the effect of Unbroken continued to feed Bloodweave with power, creating another cycle. Arenos, arenat, arenos, 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 a cycle of unbroken will to survive. This was how Sonny was able to live through his first encounter with the Black Knight. However, while his body eventually healed, the wound dealt to his mind remained. Days later, after Sonny finally crawled from that ditch, he was never quite the same, and he never forgot the debt he owed to the Black Knight. One day, he was going to kill the bastard, no matter the cost. Arenos, arenos, arenos skims nenat, arenos, 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 arenoidum. And now, approaching the cathedral months later in the company of Effie, Sonny felt like that day was drawing closer. Perhaps he really should agree to participate in Neff's expedition, as long as she helps him repay that debt. There was a lot to think about. Effie's voice tore him away from these thoughts. Sonny, are you all right? He shook off the harrowing memories, hesitated for a bit, and then smiled. Of course, never been better. Here we are, by the way. Welcome to my humble palace. The huntress looked at the grandiose cathedral with doubt. Here? You live here? Sonny remembered his first nightmare and shrugged. What can I say? I have a weak spot for ancient temples.